Great to see you here. Can I add my warm welcome to Cameron's and those of the others, whether you are joining us here in person in London at the IET or actually online. We've got a big online crowd, so it's great to have you with us too. My name is Steve Smith. I'm also at the University of Oxford with Cameron. I'm the Executive Director of CORE, which is the Greenhouse Gas Removal Hub. And I'm going to tell you a bit about the Greenhouse Gas Removal Demonstrators Programme, which UKRI have kindly funded, as you've heard, and also the work of CORE and the wider programme, introduce you to the demonstrators who will also tell you a bit about their work. It struck me actually, for those of you particularly here in London, we've got a beautiful venue here. I hope you're enjoying it and the chance to come out for a physical meeting, which hasn't happened much recently. We're in central London by the banks of the River Thames. It actually strikes me as a very apt location for this. Because I don't know if you're aware, but this is one of the sites of one of the first major environmental cleanup operations of the industrial era. Back in the 19th century, in the 1800s, all of London's waste, the human waste from the toilets, the industrial waste from factories, was simply sluiced straight into the River Thames. The River Thames was a dumping ground. It became increasingly smelly, increasingly foul. It was losing species and habitats. And actually, it was a source of disease. Tens of thousands were dying of cholera. And the situation got worse and worse and worse until the government finally decided to act after what was known as the Great Stink of 1858. This is a painting of them building the new London sewer network. And this is a key part of the London sewer network, the Victoria Embankment, where we stand now. After that, cholera ended. And the sewer network has been serving London as London has continued to grow for 150 years. So this is a classic case of an environmental waste problem. And we sadly have to deal with multiple environmental waste problems these days. And we do that in several ways. The principal thing is not make the waste in the first place. But of course, we also, in many environmental waste problems, clean up the waste. We deal with the risk and the reality that some waste gets into the environment, and we have systems in places for tidying them up when that happens. We don't just leave them to accumulate. And that is essentially what we're aiming to do with greenhouse gas removal for our current environmental problem with greenhouse gas waste. So I'm going to tell you a bit about the Greenhouse Gas Removal Demonstrators Programme. It's funded by UKRI under the Strategic Priorities Fund, so it's multidisciplinary. It cuts across multiple research council domains, Natural Environment Research Council, and more. And it's £31.5 million being spent over a period of 4.5 years. We actually started in May last year, so we're about a year into the programme, and we'll run until November 25 in this initial phase of funding. And the UKRI set essentially 3 headline aims for this programme. It's about assessing sustainable routes for large-scale greenhouse gas removal. There's principally a UK focus. So this is about how do we achieve the UK's net zero target. But there's also an eye on the global perspective, given that this is a global issue. So, and a recognition actually that, that globally we're going to need a very large amount of greenhouse gas removal if we're to achieve global targets, alongside, of course, very widespread reductions in emissions wherever we can. And there's an opportunity there. So it's about putting the UK in a place to be able to participate and taking a lead role in that global scale up. So, here is the structure of the programme. There are 5 demonstration projects, each trialling innovative new methods actually in the real world, testing these things, seeing how they work, doing fundamental and applied research to understand those methods. And then there is also a greenhouse gas removal hub, which is called CORE, and that's where I work. And the role of the hub is to do multidisciplinary research. So we have experts in economics, in law, in systems engineering, in public perceptions, in ecology, and in innovation, for instance. But we're not just a research body. We also have a role to help coordinate across the program with the demonstrators. And we also have a role to engage. We're a research and engagement project, really, and to be a focal point for the emerging GGR research community in the UK. So I'd like to tell you briefly a little bit about what we're doing in core, and then a member of each of the demonstrator projects is also going to stand up and tell you briefly about the demonstrator projects and what they're doing. So we're a team of 32 in core across 7 universities, led by the Smith School at the University of Oxford. Actually, what I might do is ask, if you're a member of core, the hub, perhaps you don't mind just putting your hand up so other people in the audience can see where you are. You can go and find these people and talk to them. So we've got a good turnout there. And if you're a member of a demonstrator project as well, perhaps you can put your hand up and you'll have a chance to see these people at the Innovation Showcase. So we've got a good turnout. Thank you very much. And if you're sitting next to them and you want to collar them afterwards, please do. In core, we have 3 headline aims. Number 1 is supportive policies. We want to understand the policy environment and analyze that. So if you speak to anyone working in this space and ask them kind of what is the main challenge to scaling removals at the moment, you will probably hear, if not the number 1 thing, then very close to the top of their shortlist is there's just a lack of a policy scheme to incentivize and to regulate removals. If you have a removal idea, it's very hard to understand where the business model is and where the incentive to scale is and how that's supposed to be done. So what we want to do in the hub is generate and analyze a portfolio of policy options, really, for policymakers to take forward, ones that are really implementable and equitable and provide these kind of bankable business models that we're going to need for sustainable removal deployment. Number 2 is actually the scalable technologies themselves. So we want to help accelerate the development of scalable, effective technologies, and also, of course, sift out ineffective ones rapidly. We need to fail fast, in a way, if we're going to succeed here. And a key part, actually, of understanding scalability is being able to evaluate the factors which influence scalability, have a framework for evaluating different options, and that's something I'll come to. And the third thing is enhanced capacity. So we want to help build particularly a greenhouse gas removal research and innovation community. We're doing that by linking initiatives both within the program and also linking to other programs which are emerging around the world on this topic. So in the next few slides, I'm just going to show you very briefly some things that we have already done or are doing as the hub and also with the demonstrators, just to give you a flavor of how we're working towards these aims. On supportive policies, number 1, obviously we're doing a lot of research, and actually members of our team have already published and are working on proposing different ways, different policy structures by which this stuff might be incentivized and regulated. That could be, for instance, by putting an obligation either on emitters of fossil fuels or on fossil fuel producers, giving them an obligation to take back the carbon they dump in the atmosphere. Also, we've had members of the team who've edited special issues of journals looking at really interesting case studies of how removal policies are developing around the world. But we're not just stopping at researching and publishing papers. We're also engaging very actively with the likes of BEIS and DEFRA and Parliament. There was a recent inquiry by the Environmental Audit Committee of MPs on negative emissions technologies. That's another expression for greenhouse gas removal technologies, really. And as a whole program, actually, we inputted into a written submission for evidence. We were asked to go in and give oral evidence, and it was really nice to see some of the key points we made sort of come through in the EAC's advice then to the Secretary of State. And there are a number of other subtopics within this domain that both the hub and the demonstrators are really engaging quite directly with government on. Scalable technologies, aim number 2. Now, of course, principally, the critical part of this program on this is the demonstrators themselves, and so you will hear more about them. I just want to give you a piece of news, though. You might have heard mentioned earlier from Lizzie and seen on the agenda this idea of Pathfinder projects. One thing that we have in the hub is the ability to support, we have a pot of funding for supporting new innovations in a much more sort of rapid response sort of way. And we issued a call for early stage proof of concept ideas which might be promising. There's a lot of scope for innovation, I think, in this space. And so I can announce today that we have actually awarded funding for 4 different projects. You can see them there, and you can find out more about those projects in the innovation showcase as you move around. What we're trying to do really here is provide an innovation pipeline where we're not missing any gaps. So we can support the really early stage proof of concept, bench scale, lab scale ideas through to larger scale demonstrations and work in sort of pre-commercial competitions that the likes of Bayes is doing, right through to deployment. So we need that healthy pipeline. I also mentioned about evaluation, and this is something else that we've been working hard on in the hub, with a lot of engagement actually from many of you as stakeholders in this process, and with the demonstrators and with our research team within the hub. We think it's really important, given these really widely varying removal techniques and the whole host of issues that Mark and Gideon have touched on, that we have a coherent and consistent and transparent process for evaluating and understanding the different factors which will influence the scaling of these technologies. So as of today, actually on the core website, CO2RE.org, you can find this version 1.0 of this evaluation framework that we have put together. And we've identified really 6 kind of high-level aspects that influence the scaling of these approaches. So number 1 is about the features of the removal itself. How much might it scale to in terms of actual tons of greenhouse gases removed? How durable is that storage? What's the time profile of uptake of these processes? But there are a wider set as well. There's the environmental aspect. So what happens to soil, water, ecosystems, air quality when you do these things? What about the social considerations? We've got members of the team who've worked on really interesting social readiness metrics as well as technology readiness levels. How do these things fit into actual systems? So what are their resource requirements? Where do they require new bits of infrastructure which we maybe don't have yet, or where it slots really nicely into existing systems? And resource requirements in terms of kind of capital expenditure, operating expenditure as well. What's the business model? This is a key thing for many of these technologies. Where can the value be captured? Where is the kind of viable business proposition here? And what's the regulatory framework, both in terms of stimulating these things, but also governing and regulating them? So our aim is, we've identified 2 or 3 sort of indicators under each of these categories, and we've really worked with stakeholders to make those as decision relevant in the metrics as possible, so that this actually helps to influence real world decisions. So the idea is, so we've been working with our stakeholders. That includes public and civil society organizations, policymakers, GGR businesses, people who want to invest in GGR, and the wider research community and the demonstrators to help influence what goes into this framework. And then this is a generalizable framework which we will be applying not only to the demonstrator methods, but initial subset of key methods, but in theory can be applied to the full range. And you may be wondering, are we going to pick the best GGR method and then kind of throw out the rest? That's exactly not what we're going to be doing. So if you're involved in one particular method, don't worry. What we recognize is that different people will put different weightings on these criteria. So if you're an environmental regulator, you probably care about the environmental stuff and maybe the legal stuff. If you are an investor, you probably care about the business models most. But what we're doing here is providing a coherent and consistent framework which allows people to make decisions and choose how they would prefer to scale up these technologies. So we're going to continue over the coming few months to engage with you to refine this framework and to populate it with information so that people can have this shared resource in terms of thinking through in a consistent way what the issues to scaling are. Just finally then, the third one. So I talked about policies, I talked about scalable technologies, enhanced capacity. A key thing we're doing here is building a nascent GGR research and innovation community in the UK, and we're doing that through holding several events. We're bringing together a whole range of disciplines that are relevant to this topic, and people who haven't all worked together before. One of the really exciting things we're doing is we're bringing up this cohort of early career researchers as well, focused on this topic, and we're building a common understanding, a common lexicon, a common research agenda. We're holding events as well to more broadly disseminate the state of knowledge. So we held recently an online public event on what does the IPCC say about carbon dioxide removal, to share the results. And it was really great that we got some of the key authors actually of the IPCC report directly to tell us what's in it and where they think we go from here. So you can find that on the Smith School YouTube channel if you want to watch it. And of course, finally, this event, this is a big thing for us. So this is not only the launch of the GGR-D programme, but we wanted to make it bigger than that. We wanted to showcase the range of projects that are actually trying to deliver real removals across the UK. So it's really exciting to have that showcase for you to mill around. We hope you get to talk to the people in the demonstrator projects, in some of the Bayes projects, and a few others. And also broaden and diversify the community involved in this space, because it's going to have to get a lot bigger and involve more people, more types of people if we're going to succeed here. So you can find out more. Do sign up to our newsletter. Hopefully you've had an invitation to do so if you've signed up to this event. But you can find out more on the core website. You can email us, find us on Twitter. Many of the demonstrators have their own Twitter feeds as well. And we look forward to working with you. I just want to return to the idea of the Victoria Embankment to close, because I think it's quite funny, actually, that most people don't know that it's a sewer. Most people come here to work, to meet, to take in the beautiful views. And maybe that's an aim we can have, actually, in attempting to halt climate change and tidy up our accumulated waste as part of that. Maybe we can have broader aims to not just fix climate, but have much wider and enduring benefits for people and for nature as well. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.